Okay.
You can just hold it.
No, it's fine.
Oh. Here we go. This is a research project that I completed through the University of Pikeville. I spent the last 2 years, actually the last 2 years researching the Kagan method, and then the last year I've actually spent incorporating the Kagan method into my classes. I know that you are all familiar with the Kagan method. Some of you have actually done research projects on it before, so I'm not going to go into much detail about what Kagan is. I am going to distribute this after we get finished though, so if you want to learn a little bit more about it, you can click on that link. That's kind of got some of the main components, some of the structures that are used in the Kagan method. For purposes of my classroom, I only used 3 to 4 of the methods. They're the ones that seem to resonate the most with my children. They're the ones that held their interest, that I felt like they were getting the most out of. So those are the ones that I'm going to touch on today. Okay, so the way I started out, my priority was to figure out if the Kagan method works within the parameters of my classroom. As you know, this is my first year teaching 3, 4, 5. And when I came up, there was a steady decline in test scores and morale and just enjoyment of reading in general in 3, 4, 5, and I wanted to remedy that. The way that I set this up is that I delivered mostly Kagan method in 3rd grade and 4th grade. 5th grade, while it wasn't strictly teacher-led instruction, there weren't specific Kagan structures involved in that classroom. And so the only thing that differed between these is the fact that I didn't deliver Kagan in 5th grade, I did in 3rd and 4th. The teachers were the same, everything, the classroom setup was the same. That was the only thing different between them. Okay, the reason that I decided to do this, like I stated before, 3, 4, 5 has had a steady decline in their test scores over the last 3 years. Got to looking at it, got to asking the children why they thought that they weren't performing at a level that I know that they can. They don't like reading. They just don't enjoy it. They feel like they're being forced to read. The things that they were reading, they weren't enjoying so much, and so I wanted to remedy that. I wanted to make them enjoy reading again. I wanted them to be able to move around the room and see that reading is not just sitting down with a book, staring at it for an hour, and taking an 8-hour test on it. I wanted to incorporate a lot of different, I guess, strategies to get them interested in the reading process as a whole. Their self-confidence, not so great at the beginning of the school year. Not in 3rd grade, not in 4th grade, not in 5th grade. And so I know that when children love things, they're going to do better at them. They're going to feel more confident with them. And so all of these things that I looked at, Kagan structures just seemed like the easiest way to reach those students. We all know that collaboration, teamwork, group work, cultivating those peer relationships within the classroom, those are life skills. They need those when they go out into the workforce. They have to work together. So Kagan touches all of that. It helps them work together, and it was my hope that it would help them to love reading in turn, and so their test scores would naturally improve. Okay, we have really large classes here. 4th grade started the school year out 38 students in a classroom designed to fit about 25 bodies. So it's really easy for the quiet students to just slide by, to kind of fade into the background, the ones that are not in your face 24/7, answering the questions or getting into trouble or whatever. You can forget that they exist in a class of 38. I wanted to eliminate that possibility, and Kagan does that. Within every Kagan group, all students are required to do something. They have to pull their weight or the entire group suffers. For example, most of the Kagan structures, you have a recorder, you have a reader, you have people that keep them on task, you have team leaders. Everybody has a job. One person doesn't do their job, it just doesn't get done. So this is a way for them to hold each other accountable for doing the work, and the quiet kid that usually sits in the back can't be the quiet kid that sits in the back and does not get involved. Cake instructors are very hands-on. They're very active. They're required to get up and move around the classroom. And so that was something that I wanted to incorporate in the classroom. It was difficult with 38 fourth graders to have them moving around the classroom. However, it seemed to work. If the right, I guess, management is in place, it's completely doable, and it actually seemed to be working. Okay, the main structures that I utilize, like I said, I didn't use them all. There are so many Kagan structures that you can utilize if you really want to dig deep into the Kagan method. There's a ton of stuff. So if you find something that doesn't work for you, all you have to do, dig a little deeper, try something else, keep trying out all of the different structures until you find something that works. Hand up, pair up, rally robin, and quiz trade, those were their favorites. They loved the fact that they got to work together, they got to move, they got to talk. They love to talk. 4-person groups were utilized when possible. 38 kids in a classroom. Sometimes we had to go to 5. However, if the groups were modified, a 5th job was added. Nobody got to just sit and do nothing. They weren't used on a daily basis. We know that as teachers, nothing is used consistently on a daily basis. You're going to have to test kids. You're going to have to do the rote memorization as little as possible, but it's necessary. So it was used, I would say, probably 3 to 4 days out of the week. You always have a couple days a week, though, when things just don't go by the book. Okay, the results, I used the MAP test to gauge how the students were when they first came into the classroom, and then again on the winter test. I don't have the results of the spring test uploaded onto here, but I can tell you that there were consistent results with this most recent round of MAP. But for the purposes of this research project, we did fall versus winter. Okay, and these were the results. When you first look at it, it looks like it didn't work. 3rd grade, 4th grade were the 2 groups that we actually used Kagan structures on. 5th grade was not. Upon first glance, there was more growth shown in 5th grade than there were in 3rd grade and 4th grade. I was completely dumbfounded by this. I naturally assumed that the structures were going to show greater growth, and I really had to sit down and take a really close look at the results to figure out why. Do you want to take a stab at why 5th grade grew exponentially and 3rd grade and 4th grade were a little bit behind that? Special ed teachers.
Oh, 5th grade has way more IEPs than
Yes,
anybody
and
else.
once I got to looking at that, 5th grade on the first, which with all special ed students, first round of MAP, no accommodations for anybody. It's a baseline. Second round of MAP, they receive full accommodations. 3rd grade and 4th grade, while they have children with IEPs who receive accommodations on the second round, it's a very small percentage based on the whole. 5th grade, we are overwhelmed with IEPs. So when I got a little bit closer and looked at this, and this is what you saw a while ago, just in a different version, this is what we figured out. This is what I just explained. 22% of the students in 5th grade received special education services. They only received those accommodations on the second round of MAP. When you took that into accommodation, when I removed special education results from 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade, that is the growth. So, big difference in growth between 3rd grade and 4th grade and 5th grade, which actually showed less than a point of growth when you remove the special education population from the data. Okay? I had to say that the results of this are inconclusive. There are many possible reasons for the outcomes. We can only guess before we do more studies on this. But one possible explanation, Kagan is better. They learn better when they have Kagan structures implemented versus when they do not, as you saw in the second chart. The second explanation is that We know special education students, for the most part, learn well in groups. A better explanation could be that because those special education students received the Kagan instruction, that is why their scores went way up. It might not have had a whole lot to do with the accommodations. The only way that we can really be sure is to repeat the same study, test the students with a different method, no accommodations across the board on both tests. That would give us a more thorough look at who did better, why, and which factors we needed to consider. Next steps, like I said, do the positive outcomes and increase in achievement follow across disciplines. In other words, if Mr. Napier implemented these structures into his classroom, can you please ensure that that's still recording? Because we did one a little while back and it cut off within a minute and I had to repeat the entire thing.
Yeah, it's going.
It is still?
It's on low power mode. But
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Anyway, if Mr. Napier did this in math, would he see the same type of gains that we saw with reading instruction? That's something that we could look at in the future to try to see if across the building would that work. Another one, if I actually did this with 5th grade, would their scores improve as well? So those are things that we may explore in the future, but I'm not really sure. May look into that next year. Don't know. Does anybody have any questions about the Kagan method, about the studies that we did, any of that?
What were the biggest challenges you faced with using these strategies?
Class size, big time. The classroom is very small. The children are pretty big sized children, and there are 38 in 4th grade, there are 34 in 3rd grade. The fact that they needed to group up and they needed to continually move around the classroom, there's just not a lot of space to do that. Even I think if we were in a room this size with children of that age, with that many of them, it would still be a challenge. So that was probably the biggest challenge that I faced.
Do you plan on continuing this next year?
I'm not 100% certain. I feel like my plan is to probably continue this next year. However, I never say that this works for me. I'm going to do it every year. I need to get to know the students. Some students, the group settings and all of that stuff, the class sizes, it's just not conducive. So I think I would have to look at those classes and see. My plan is yes, but we'll see.
In terms of classroom management, what kinds of obstacles did that present, and did you feel like it has to be a person who has really good classroom management skills?
Absolutely. When you first walk into a Kagan classroom, if you don't know what's going on, it could look like complete chaos, pandemonium. However, a teacher who has a good handle, they know what's happening in this group, they know what's happening in this group, they know why this group is running around in circles, they know why this group is moving. They have to know what's going on, why it's going on. Those students as well have got to be modeled for, you have to reinforce the behavior expectations within those groups, because it's very easy to let the students kind of run amok with it. It's very easy for them to get off task. I recommend, if you have someone else working in the classroom, especially as large a classroom as what we have, thank goodness, I've had 2 other people working almost daily in there, so they were much easier to implement that way. But yes, if you are not completely structured, if the expectations are not modeled on a daily basis, many times, especially at first, yes, it can look and feel like pandemonium and not a lot gets accomplished. So that's probably the biggest, I guess that should be your biggest focus
So,
as you move into.
Would you recommend a first-year teacher try Kagan?
With heavy guidance, I would never look at a first-year teacher and say, you probably need to figure this out a little bit before you try it, because the structures work, they're great. Some people naturally have that super organized, super diligent about what's going on at all places attitude. I think that it would be teacher to teacher basis. If it's a teacher that's a little apprehensive about his or her management skills, if it's someone that walks into the classroom and, like I was the first year, oh my gosh, how am I gonna make 38 children listen to me and behave? It's probably not the structure for you to use right out the gate. Like I said, I mean, some very type A management type people who can feel confident with overseeing several different groups at a time, give it a go. The worst that can happen is you completely fail at it, you learn from it, you go on, you try it again later.
And then conversely, you've got people who are approaching 30 years who've always done it a certain way. Is there anything that you would say to them if they were gonna go from that traditional, I've got my desks in 5 rows, to let's all sit in groups of 4?
I would ask that teacher if they're bored. A lot of times, if you've been teaching 30 years, you know, you're burnt out, you're bored. I can't see a better way to get yourself back into the fun of education than to start something like this. I wouldn't say go whole hog the first day. Maybe try structure here, try structure there, see if it's for you, because it's not for everybody. Some people, they've got their thing going on, it works for them, it might not be for them. However, if they're bored, their kids are bored. And so I would just try. Just give it a little bitty chance and see if it's something that could work in your classroom.
So has your alternate seating you have implemented since the beginning of the year, has that helped with the Kagan strategy?
It actually has, and I was worried about that because we did go to alternate seating probably November. We were fully alternate seating. Before then, we were kind of like just playing around with it and seeing how it worked. Yeah, the couches that are in the classroom, the alternate chairs, they actually lend themselves well to group work. So it actually, I feel like we had the perfect setup for the Kagan structures to be implemented, because you know, when you're sitting on 2 couches facing one another, it's natural to converse and to work collaboratively. So yeah, I feel like it worked pretty well. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you all so much. I appreciate it. I'm going to send this slideshow out, so if you have any questions about it, wherever, you can watch it and send me a note.
We'll send you a happy